Hey guys, welcome to the Merry Boozers channel. Me and Wesley. I want to say one thing about this is that Wesley and I are having just a great time trying to bring you guys some interesting things to look at over and above airplanes. Today we're going to be talking about, I guess, the last installment of the Boozer, about the plane and the crews that flew on the plane and the one person that I knew personally that was my father. So today, most of this will be about my dad and his training. One of the things that I hope God will come down and touch me with is to show you how special these people were and why they were called the greatest generation. They really deserve it, guys. If you lived with them like I did, and you've seen their struggles because of the time that they were raised, then you might have called them the greatest generation also. So hopefully today, without being too lengthy about things, we're going to show you my dad's career in the Army Air Corps for the 2 short years he was in, but you'll probably be amazed how much of an experience he had in those 2 short years. Wesley, you want to say anything about what we're doing?
Well, guys, the good news is Dad has the history of this, and I've been around it growing up, but mainly he's gonna know really what all this is. So I'm here just to look pretty today, and we're gonna listen to Papa Boozer.
Unfortunately, Wesley never got to know his grandfather, and why that is that I wasn't born until 1953. I had a sister that was born in 48. So Dad was about 29 years old when he finally had me. So he was kind of an older guy for me. I mean, I'm 65, but a lot of World War II veterans have children that's in their 70s now. So, my dad was kind of a young World War II veteran, even though he was born in 43. A lot of these guys were from 1918 through 1920. So Dad would be 95 years old today, but a lot of these guys that we showed you in those videos today, as I mentioned, would be close to 100. And I can't, as I said last time, I can't say that any of them are still alive. My dad passed away in 1988, the same year Wesley was born. Unfortunately, he was one of those greatest generation guys that liked 2 packs a day, and he also worked in an oil refinery, so cancer got him. So, any questions yet, Wesley?
Nothing yet. We can get
what I want to do first is break down Dad's training from the time that from the time he was drafted or sent his notice that he was going to be drafted all the way through when he returned home. And that will go through him being drafted in 43 to his separation in 45. So, let's get to it, guys. So, The thing is that, graduation, high school, April 18th of 43.
I think you actually have it.
From Ryan, Oklahoma. He was 17 years old. So, if you look at this book, we have his high school graduation diploma and his program from his high school graduation, and his poor picture that, like I say, everybody when they were that age was not the greatest look. I'm not the greatest looking guy in the world either, so you can kind of, somebody asked me where Wesley got his look, and it wasn't from my side of the family, it was from his mother's side. But anyway, his high school diploma from Ryan, Oklahoma. Dad was born in Walters, Oklahoma, June 19th, 1924. So, the next thing after graduation, prior to him being, you would have to go down and, Wesley, you hold this up. This is his classification card, or draft card, is a lot of people call it, that was activated back then. And so you had to go and register at age 16 for the draft. And that puts you in the pool. Then the next thing you would do, you would be notified to have your physical examination. So there's that card that says, come down and let's see how fit you are to be in the military. If you didn't have flat feet or a fat head, or was not the smartest thing in the world, you're probably going to be drafted. Then we showed this on the last video, was actually the greeting that you were being drafted.
A letter from the president,
Yeah,
saying
says,
you're coming to war.
Greetings, boy, you show up at a certain time here and you're going to report for induction.
Is the lighting okay for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just so you've always heard about that greeting notice from president, it says greetings from the president. You've been elected. So anyway, got that idea. So that happened. The order to report for induction, it says here on June 2nd, 1943. And
Actually have the letter that it came in
show
to.
up at Waurika, Oklahoma. A lot of people, I'm going to just real brief. Waurika, Ryan, Terrell, all that was right across the river from Wichita Falls on the Red River. Just so you kind of have an idea there. So, what happened to you after you was told to show up to Waurika, Oklahoma that day? Well, you go to your induction center, which was Fort Walters in Mineral Wells, Texas, which a lot of people call basic training. I'm sorry, this is magnetic for some reason. That's magnetic. But anyway, so you basic training, I think they call it just induction training, was for 5. Okay, here's how it breaks down, guys. At 5 weeks of training was 73 hours of drill and marching, 15 hours of physical training, 54 hours of marksmanship, 13 hours of military procedures, 8 hours of first aid, 12 hours of sanitation, 3 hours of personal adjustment, 5-hour care of clothing and equipment, 5 hours of defense against chemical attack, 5 hours of individual security and camouflage, 4 hours of maps and photo interpretation, 4 hours of defense against attack. And then on top of all that, you took a test to see your ability, or your how much training or education you had, so they could classify you and put you into what they felt like was where you needed to be. So one of the things that I like to mention here, does anybody know who Audie Murphy is? Audie Murphy, I'm not going to say that he went through, but Audie Murphy went to the Fort Walters basic training, which Audie Murphy was the most highly decorated soldier in World War II. And Audie Murphy was maybe raised about 60 miles from where my dad was. Just a little bit of interesting thing there. Okay, so we've got him through basic training. I really don't have any pictures of his basic training, so he's got through that. Okay, so the testing, since he was only a high school education, he was going to be limited on being something like a navigator, a bombardier, or a pilot, because they wanted a little bit more mathematics. And you didn't go, you had basic math through high school. You might have had a little bit of algebra, but you didn't have trigonometry, and you didn't have geometry, and you didn't have any of the higher stuff, which that would be how they would took the people that would be navigators and bombardiers and pilots. So in a way, not to say all of them did that, but a lot of them, that's how you got there. By the time that Dad got there in 43, they were needing a lot of enlisted men to fill the holes on the crews. So, anyway, Dad was elected to be, with his testing, to be a radio operator. So, where did he go? Technical Training Radio School was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And that was in early 43 to early 44. Because it was, radio school was kind of along, you had to learn Morse code. You had to learn about the radios, how to repair the radios. You had to learn about the radio etiquette. I don't know all of them, but it says 26 courses ranging from 4 to 44 weeks, and that's depending on what kind of training you was taking. And I said page 279. I'm going to see what, I forgot what 279 was all about. 279, Wesley already had this done by now. That's
What the heck? What the heck?
a lot of dead space here.
It's okay.
Anyway, I think it's about radio school, but I can't read the pages now because I'm getting so old and I got these. 279, radio navigation. Okay, I was going to tell you that the radio operator worked closely with the navigator, okay, because of the time period and how they, radio operator was able to do directional finding by radio beam. And that's what I wanted to mention. So another thing in his training was to learn how to coordinate and cross-section radio transmission. That's what that 279 meant. Okay, so he makes it through radio and navigation. So he makes it, this is when, this time he was 19 years old through this period. Now, what he does is he gets a furlough and he gets to go see his mother and dad, which will flip these pages over a little bit until I find them. They're not in coordinated. Here he is. He says on furlough 44. He actually turned 20 years old, and he was able to go see my grandmother and grandfather in Big Spring, Texas, where my grandfather had taken a job at the Webb Air Force Bombardier School. He was a fireman at the Bombardier School at that time. You got to remember, we were coming out of the Depression. It's great to have a job. So my grandmother and grandfather moved to Big Spring, Texas for him to have that job at that air base, which was a Bombardier School. So he turns 20 years old in June 19th, 1944. And then what happens to him? He goes to gunnery school at Yuma, Arizona. And that was early 44 to May of 44. And like I say, he gets a furlough back to home and 20th birthday. So he started out at 18 up here, and he's made it through his 19th year here. It took that long. He's 20 years old. Now from there, after he finishes gunnery school, and that means there's some real good videos out there of them shooting. They start them out shooting shotguns to like trap shooting, and they take them all the way through the 50 caliber machine gun. As far as rail guns, the planes are moving down and they're moving, and anyway, that's what they do in gunnery school. Being a radio man on a 24, he would have to be either a substitute gunner or a main gunner on some of the missions, just so you know that. All right, so
Hang on.
I don't know if my mic is still here, but technical difficulties. There we go. I think we're back.
we're back to, okay. Can we still see? Everything kind of got dark. We're back to, okay. Can we still see? Everything kind of got dark in here. The sun
I was
went.
fixing to turn on the light, and then all that happened.
Well, okay. So, all right, here we go.
Turn it
Back in the.
off when we're looking at
Ooh, So where we were was that we finished gunnery school. Now we're going to crew training in Muroc, California, and I'm actually gonna he turns to be a corporal. He gets to be a corporal by this time. He turns to be a corporal. He gets to be a corporal by this time. 1 stripe for radio school, 1 stripe for gunnery. So he's a corporal. So by this time, and here we go again, page 110. I'm going to actually read this page a little bit to give you an idea about crew training. It says here, under the present replacement training units
It's going through your hands.
system, flying personnel, pilots, navigators, bombardiers, gunners, and radio men report to groups within the 4 domestic air forces. That would have been the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Air Forces that were based in the United States.
Okay.
They are trained by instructor crews, many of them with combat experience. Administration and maintenance work are done by ground echelon, which is regular part of the group. Trainees undergo a 90-day course divided into 3 overlapping phases. First, the trainee increases their proficient in individual skills, learn to work as a team. That's very important, and become familiar with equipment and techniques. Second, formation flying is stressed. Finally, trainees move to a training area with approximately indicates a battle zone, flying long formation bombing missions by day and night, learning to live, work, and fly under combat conditions. So that's what crew training is. Now, as all young men do, they want to keep some kind of this right here, that crew training. And I guess I don't really know, but I'm one of the guys that Corporal Richard E. DeWell, Lake City, Michigan, and Armorer Corporal Oscar E. Jones, and I think Mr. Jones was on the Boozer, New Orleans, Louisiana, and radio operator Corporal Charles W. Miller, Big Spring, Texas. So, and it says on the back of it, now here, it says, here's wishing you the best kind of luck. All kinds of luck, Rick. So anyway, this is kind of a made up photograph. They must have went downtown or something and dressed up. So there he is in crew training in 44 in Muroc, California. Now, something of interest, guys. We're gonna show you communications back in those days. If you wanted to write a letter, you when you was in the States, you would go maybe to the USO. They always had postcards. And you could ship those within the continental United States free. So postcards were just a way to be able to communicate with your relatives or whatever and let them know what you was doing. You couldn't write anything that could be give the enemy any information. So they couldn't mention anything about where they were, but they could say, okay, we're in training so. But that was how they communicated there. Another thing is I'd like to show you is we showed you this on the last video, but when you were assigned to a flight crew, you got a wristwatch. Wristwatches was not a common thing back in the early 40s. As I told most people, most men wore pocket watches. Wristwatches actually come along and got popular during the war. This was actually Dad's wristwatch from the war. Another thing is, I'd kind of like to show you this, since on the home front, these are actually my grandmother and grandfather's. You always heard about war rationing books, and you had to use the rations to buy food and sugar, anything that was gasoline, anything was rationed, you had to have so many books or points to buy those war rations. So they look like this. This is actually a war ration book. And on the inside, if you guys are old enough to remember green stamps, which some of you don't remember, you would tear out the points to buy whatever you're wanting to buy, okay? And normally, my grandmother and my grandfather got 2 books. It depended on how much gasoline you got by what kind of job you had to be able to buy gasoline at that time. So, it gives you a little bit of idea about that. Now, we got him through gunnery school, and now he's in crew training, and he's a corporal. June the 23rd is when this all happened in 44. First recorded record of flight training. I actually have his flight training. So the first record of him going up in an airplane was in June. And it says 9 total flights of 23 hours. July, he had 14 flights at 51.2 hours. August, he had 15 flights at 46.2 hours. September 18, 55. October, and through November, he only had 2 flights in November, and that would be the end of his crew training. Interesting story here, guys, that he told me about. And Dad did not say a whole lot about his war experience. Kind of comes in just over a long period of time, just little spurts he would give me, and this is one of them. When they got matched up on their crew training, it said that they had to have so many flight hours to give to remember, they were training and make sure in each one of them were proficient in what they were trained at doing. Well, this particular night, they were actually have the navigator was telling them how to go. They gave the instructions to the navigator to go out so far and come back. And anyway, they're out there and they've been flying around for about 2 hours, and they're taking this particular navigator's instructions, and the pilot calls down to the navigator and said, where exactly are we? And he said, well, we're so many miles out over the Pacific Ocean. You've got to remember, you're in California, you're on a bomber. And we're so and so far out over the Pacific. He said, would you like to try that again? And he said, I don't understand. Of course, he couldn't look outside either. He was doing this strictly by looking down at his charts and things. So the pilot says, I don't think you know where you're at. He said, oh no, we're out there over the Pacific Ocean. He said, well, I don't think so. He said, would you like to try again? So he sits there for a few minutes and does his calculations and says, yep, that's right, that's where we are. He said, would you like to look outside? So anyway, it's a moonlit night and they're over land. So, and Dad said over the intercom system, the navigator finally says, I have no clue. So the pilot radios down to my dad and says, get us a radio fix and find out where we are. After they did that, come to find out, they were about 200 miles south on the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. Anyway, after they finally did a radio fix and flew back on the transponder back, got on at base, he said, I don't know what happened to that navigator, but I never seen it again. So anyway, funny story. You mess up, you go somewhere else. He might have been cleaning pots and pans the rest of the war. I don't know. But that was kind of funny for Dad. But they got a man that Dad said this guy you could put him blindfolded anywhere on the face of the earth, and in about 10 minutes he could tell you exactly where you were. So anyway, crew training. That was what it was all about. Getting ready to go. So anyway, transferred. This is when they get transferred overseas. December of 44, they're in transit overseas to Pacific operations. They actually get to combat training in January. Okay, so there's a month kind of when they're first getting shipped overseas. They actually go through Hawaii, and this is another funny story. This is the best story, one of the best stories I've got.
Why you're in there?
One of the best stories I got. He befriended a lieutenant. And I gotta find it. I wish I could do this a little bit better. Here he is with the guy right here. Little guy. His name was Lieutenant John Franco. Him and this is Donald Scott was on this, but Mr. Franco was not on the same airplane as my dad. Now, how they befriended each other, I have no clue. But anyway, the story that Dad told, and this was a good one. They were there on transit from going overseas. They were in Hawaii, and Lieutenant Franco calls him one night and says, "Wesley, we have a officers party that you cannot miss." He said, "How can I go? I'm not an officer, I'm a corporal." He said, "I've got it all figured out, but you're going." He said, "You know what they're," he said, "I've got arranged to get a uniform for you. Only a 20-year-old kids could do this, okay?" He said, "I've arranged to get a uniform for you, and you're going to that party." He said, "If they do a check on me, they're going to throw me in. I won't never see the light of day." He said, "I got that figured out too." He said, "All my buddies, if they start doing a check for some reason, we're going to put you in the middle, and they'll have to get to all of us before they get to you." Well, anyway, off goes Dad. As he said, the funny story is he was an officer for one night. And he said, "We had a great time, always remembered it." So that was one of the really funny things that Dad told me about Mr. Franco, and all the some of these other officers that, and I want to tell you that, guys, that sometimes the officer and the thing went out the window. Now, you know, if there were military protocol, yeah, it was there, but you know, these guys were just trying to have fun, and sometimes an officer would befriend a non-commissioned personnel. So that was a good story I like to tell. Okay, so we've done that.
Hawaii.
Yeah, we can go to Hawaii. I mean, but the Hawaii is back when he gets back from.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought he went first. Okay.
No. All the pictures we have of Hawaii is actually
Okay.
pictures when he comes back home. All right, so we're in transit from Hawaii to our destination, to our first combat missions. January of 45, he hits the island of Guam, Saipan, there in that world. So his first combat mission was January the 22nd over Iwo Jima. These, as I had in the last video, these missions were longer than the missions in Europe. The missions in Europe over Germany, that kind of thing, were about 8 hours.
Here's Iwo
Iwo Jima. Yeah, this is a bomb photo of the bombs hitting Iwo Jima.
Oh, here, let me turn the light off.
Okay,
There you go.
that is actually a bomb strike on Iwo Jima. If you, all the little puffs down here in the bottom of the bombs going off. Oh, good thing. When I was young, I built a model of a B-24, and it was one of the only times that Dad told me anything.
This was a flying boat. That's actually
Yeah,
a Japanese flying boat.
Yeah, and it's on
Being
fire.
shot down.
Yeah. But Dad told me, I asked Dad when I said, "Dad, what kind of, big of bombs did you use when you was bombing Iwo Jima? He said, didn't use no bombs. He said some missions maybe, but most of the missions we flew over Iwo Jima, we had 55-gallon drums of gasoline. He said when we started on that island in December, remember they were bombing Iwo Jima for them to invade, and Iwo Jima was invaded in February of 45, so they were softening it up. He said when we started with that in December of 44, it was a lush green island. He said when we finished out with it in the 1st of February, that thing was burnt off. He said, I don't know how anybody survived on it because it was a firebomb. Of course, everybody knows that the Japanese have dug tunnels all over the thing, and that's how they survived. But it must have been miserable. But most of the missions that Dad flew were with 55-gallon drums of gasoline. And it made one heck of a big boom. I said, well, what if it didn't explode? He said, oh, maybe one of them had one of those incendiary bombs to make sure it lit off. But he said, if you drop one from far enough up, it explodes pretty good. So, but they did not have napalm at that time. Napalm was not developed at that time. So anyway, all right. So we went over Iwo Jima, January 2nd, 22nd, first mission. I looked this up. This little island was only 45 miles north of Saipan, and why they were flying there, I don't know. But you guys interpret that whatever you. But I found out that this is an island that was 45 miles north of Saipan, and it was actually occupied by the Japanese. But it was only like a 2-hour mission because it's only 45 miles away. But they did make one mission. January 28th, another Iwo Jima strike. So that gets us through January. We go into February. I don't remember what 42nd. Okay, and this is okay. What I mean, that was 45 February 45. Two missions over Iwo. On the 7th day of February, they did this Manila, whatever it is. 8th is another mission over Iwo Jima. 10th day was Haha, wherever that is.
Your magnet stuck again.
Yep, and the 14th Iwo Jima again. They did a lot of Iwo Jima, didn't they, guys? 16th Iwo again. 18th Iwo. 22nd is Chikajima. Now, the last video we mentioned, and you can look this up, Chikajima was a radio translator station that the Japanese had to relay their messages because of distance. So Chikajima was a very important relay station, and they wanted to keep them from relaying missions, so they bombed Iwo. Now, Chikajima. Like I said in the last video, our President Bush was shot down over Chikajima, and he knew by that time it was a secret, but the Japanese, if you landed on that island, would cut your head off and either eat your liver or some of your flesh. They actually cannibalized the flyers that flew. If you happened to get shot down on the island, they captured you, you was pretty well going to get killed, and you were going to get part of you eaten some way. The photographs you're looking at right now is of Saipan. There's actually Saipan, all those photographs. And one of them on the other page, this is a pillbox down here. And if we turn the page over, I remember this saying in the old days, little hot things in Saipan. This were actually flak guns on Saipan. But all that was Saipan, and there is dead bodies somewhere. Saipan was where they jumped off the cliffs and killed themselves. So there is,
Think over
and
here.
somewhere there's some dead bodies in there somewhere. Tanks, stuff like that.
Viewer discretion advised.
Well, I mean, it is war, guys.
Yep.
This is not fun. Okay, everybody got pictures of Saipan,
You
right?
can keep talking.
Keep talking.
She's just
Yeah.
watching pictures.
Well, what I want to do is show you right now. Next little insert is how they communicated when you was over in your theater of operation as far as combat. Then there was, how do you communicate back home? It was called a victory letter. Victory letters were, if you get to think about how much paper weighs and how many people are overseas, that would be a pile of letters, right? I mean, if they put them in a bag. So what they come up with, the ingenious idea of you wrote a letter, then it went to a certain place, and they made microfilm of that, and they sent the microfilm to that Pacific destination where you were stationed. They reprinted it, and it was called a victory letter. And this is what the letter looked like that you would get. So, you know, they would have microfiche that was a little bitty film. They could have 10,000 of these letters on a film, and then when they got to they would make this for you. They would hand that to you as far as your letter from back home. It's called a victory letter. So if you've never seen one, that's what one looks like. All right. So if you've never seen a victory letter, that's what it looked like. So at home, you did the postcard in the United States. You could write a letter at home and send it to. You can't. Not to say you couldn't, but this was just a short, brief thing. This is interesting. This letter here is an old dollar, okay, guys? My great-grandfather, my father's grandfather, his name was Sam Barry Miller, gave my dad that letter the day he left Oklahoma and asked him, he said, "Son, would you please keep that with you? It's kind of just a remembrance of me, and I want to be along with you on your missions, on your when you're in harm's way, I want you to have that letter on that dollar on you." So Dad kept this in his wallet all the time he was overseas. So that's kind of a neat thing. So we finished. Our combat missions actually ended. It was kind of short and sweet. You got to remember, guys, the war was kind of coming to an end. So we finished our combat mission on the 22nd of February. And Dad had 102 hours of combat flying missions. And his APO was, and everybody knows what operational was 246, whatever that was. They did that in code to kind of, they didn't say, okay, you're on Saipan. They say, if you send a letter to him, it'd say APO 246. And okay, so controversy here. Dad, at this time, they elected to send so many. I don't know how they picked and chose the crews that went back. I don't know if it had to do with how many hours they had flying or whatever, but so many crews, because they didn't really need them anymore. And Dad always told me that they told him that they were sending them back to the States to be trained on B-29s and for the invasion of Japan. And they were to go, their first destination was Hawaii on their transit back. They stopped in Hawaii, And that's actually where he stayed. And he was with the 7th Air Force still yet. And they had to keep their flying up, guys, to keep their flying pay. So every month they had to fly so many missions to keep their flying pay up and their training up. So all of these pictures are of Hawaii at that time. And this would have been, Dad would have been in Hawaii from March through December of 45. Well, I say that, but February through March they flew recon missions for 10 of them for 82 hours, but they were recon missions, and then they went to, as far as I can tell, they went to Hawaii. And they had 553.25 hours of flight time from April to November of 45. Now, all these pictures, most of these pictures are of them in Hawaii. Now, this is a real neat picture right here. This is actually Diamond Head. If you look at a picture today, all this is nothing but hotels. You can't hardly see it. That's the Royal Hawaiian Hotel and the beach in front of Diamond Head. That's also Diamond Head with surfers at the time. They were surfing in 1945. Okay? But there is no, if you were to see that, maybe you guys have went to Hawaii and seen this thing, but it's full of nothing but hotels now. You can't see nothing. So, anyway, these are all pictures of Hawaii at that time.
I think you missed a page, didn't you?
I don't know. Oh, yeah. Okay.
There you go.
My aunt told me this was a memorial for the Mormons. It's a shrine or something. It's for the Mormon people there. This thing here. All this thing. All these pictures here. And now I did not know that until she told me that. They were Mormons, or so she told me that was what that was. Okay, so enough of the. Okay. That's another big picture of it. Mm-hmm. Now, my mother didn't like this picture at all over the years. This was actually my dad's girlfriend in the Hawaiian Islands, and her name was Shirley Dick. And like I say, maybe hot stuff there. But my mother didn't like that at all, but we didn't throw it away. Pretty nice looking woman for her time and period. Now we're going to get to more of Hawaii. This is more Hawaii stuff.
I love this picture where they had caught the big crab.
Yeah. Now that's the Royal Hawaiian Hotel right there, guys. That's where most of the submariners stayed when they were off, when they come back and they had to recuperate from all those long missions. That the Royal Hawaiian Hotels where actually the submariners stay.
It's neat. We're giving you a little glimpse of Hawaii in 1944.
45.
This was in 1945. Okay, the year the war ended.
Some kind of, I don't know if this still exists, but this is some kind of amphitheater somewhere.
Dennis Farley said he had a good choice in woman.
Yeah, well, I guess so. All right, so we do that. Now, a lot of these pictures of Dad and his they've kind of made it through the war. But they're trying to do just young guy stuff. You can tell that they're just doing young guy things. They're traveling over the island. They're enjoying themselves. They've kind of got, Dad told me another thing. He said, how stressful is it when your ground crew is betting you 20-1 you're not coming back? It's kind of stressful. But by this time they had made it through that. They didn't know that they probably still thought there was some stuff still ahead of them, but it really wasn't. But they're doing just the regular kind of guy stuff, okay?
Sleeping under the wing of a B-24
Yeah,
in the shade.
well, I mean, yeah, but anyway. See, it says Hilo, Hawaii. Some more Hawaii here. I know that's a really famous king, Kamehameha or somebody like that, that's still there today. A lot of some of this is uh, this man here is actually a kinfolks that was he met and just had a short brief meeting with him, took his picture. Now, oh, there's another neat story I got to tell. One of the last stories that Dad told me. Dad never told me anything as far as any kind of war stories. Okay, guys, he didn't. I know Dad had PTSD, but these guys didn't really say anything much about it. Only time this man right here, this is the story I'm going to tell you. Grady Tyndall was my dad's cousin that he was raised with, and Grady was actually on the island at this time when we're talking about. He was actually on the island. He was in the Army, and he calls Grady one afternoon and says, "Grady, how about if I take you for the best steak dinner you've ever had?" And Grady said, "Well, Wesley, that sounds wonderful." He said, "Well, I want you to meet us at so-and-so airfield at so-and-so time, and we're going to pick you up. We're going to take you to another island, and you're going to have the best steak you ever had in your life." And Grady told me, I knew Mr. Tyndall, and he probably passed away about 8 to 10 years ago. But every time I'd go to a family reunion, he would have to tell me this story. He really liked it. So anyway, they pick Grady up, and they take off, and the crew says, "Hey, Grady, you know, we're going to make you an honorary member of the crew. If you're going to fly with us, you're going to have to." So he said they took me all over the airplane. You know, they let me sit down at the gunner's position. I think they let him fire one of the 50 caliber guns, so-and-so. Anyway, said, "Grady, come on up to the pilot. Pilot wants to talk to you." So he goes up there and he said, "How are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm doing fine. And you enjoying the flight?" "Yep, sure am. This is the greatest thing I've ever done." He said, "Well, as a crew member, you got to be able to take care of, if this guy gets injured here, you need to be able to take over and fly this airplane." So he said, "I'm going to let the co-pilot get up and you sit down in that flight seat. And I'm going to let you fly this airplane for a little while." Grady said, "Oh, okay." He said, "You know, I didn't think anything about it." So here I do. I sit down in that co-pilot seat, and he said, "Okay, you do this and this and this." And he says, I'm sitting here flying this 4-engine bomber and all these gauges and everything going on. And he said, "You're doing really well." He said, "Well, thank you." And he said, the pilot gets up and leaves. He said, "That was the longest 5 minutes of my life." He said, all of them was back there giggling in the back end. And he said, "I swear it was probably only 5 minutes, but it seemed like it was forever." But he had to tell me that story about him. But he did say that was the best steak he ever had in his life. So that was the story of Grady Tyndall. Now, what I want to do is go through some of the things that you carried with you on your person that you had to carry to be kind of legal. Everybody's always heard about a pass. This is a enlisted man's pass. For the time period that he was there, I guess they had a pass. They had to have the pass on them, and it says that there's so many things you have to obtain to you got to salute officers during the day. You have to wear your hat, so and so forth. You can read it on the back of there. So that's actually what a pass would have looked like. Now, we told you about his training as far as a radio operator. This is actually his certificate as far as training to be a radio operator.
Nothing on the back.
Turn it over.
Yep, nothing on the
Not
back.
a thing.
Okay, so another thing you had to do is everybody heard about all the shots you had to have.
Mhm.
Well, this is his pilot and crew physical. This is actually his physical card. Yeah, every once in a while you had to have a physical to make sure you were able to be on the physically able to fly. Okay, so it shows when he actually had his physicals and was able to fly. Now, another thing is, everybody heard about how much you had to be vaccinated. This is his vaccination record. I mean, about passing out and they shooting all that stuff up. And, you know, they had to be vaccinated for smallpox, triple typhoid, cholera, yellow fever, typhus, and plague, whatever that is. So, anyway, that's all the shots for that, the records for shots. We showed you where you had a certificate for his radio school. Here's his certificate for gunner school, and it will show you his average and his scores, the average and what his score is to pass gunnery school in Yuma, Arizona. Okay. So anyway, just so you know what that looked like. This is things that he had to carry. Now, the last thing is a pass to the NCO club in, just he had to have a prove that he was a non-commissioned officer is what NCO means. And that's his pass for that.
Beer will not be taken out of the club.
Beer will not be taken out of the club.
Right on the first. Number one rule.
Underline.
At this time, guys, Dad was actually with the 392nd Bomb Squadron, 7th Air Force, 30th Bomb Group, 392nd Bomb Squadron, and this was actually on Guam, and you can read down here. One of you read that. This was actually written in my hand, Dad's hand, on the back of this. But this is actually out in front of the squadron hut, showing what they had done to this period of time.
This was a sign.
This was a sign out in front of the squadron hut before he left Guam. And it says, "This is the best way of telling you," I'm trying to read it from far away, guys, telling you, and he's writing this to his mother and dad, "This is the best way of telling you what we have done in the past and where. This picture has a bomb for every mission on each target and a Jap flag for every air victory. This is our squadron picture, and naturally I think it is one of the best. May our luck hold good until we can add Tokyo to our list of victories." I'm sorry, I'm trying to read it from a long way. Staff Sergeant Chuck Miller, 392nd Bomb Squadron, 30th Bomb Group. He actually finished the war with that group. And here is we're going to show you first. I got a lot of pictures of nose art here, guys, which is very interesting. But this is actually, I told you they kept their flying time up. This is actually their squadron. We've got in-flight photographs when they were in Hawaii and they keeping their training up. That's what this is. The 24s. The diamond represents the 392nd on the back of the
Each
tail.
of their tail numbers would be different.
Now,
Their tail
I
numbers.
really believe that the Dad was shot down. He could have been. I know he was shot down once for sure, and I think the boozer went down. I can't tell you that for a fact because I wished I could go back and talk to him again. But none of that came out in any of our conversations. I know he was shot down. it probably was in the Boozer. But this was them formation flying there. I'm going to try to run through this real quick. I think this was also there on the island of Hawaii here with all the planes. And these are actually in formation. They've got some of them sitting on top of the airplanes. I don't know where that is.
Yeah.
Okay, these are all guys messing around on the top of a B-24. Dad, okay. So you give me an idea of that. And these are them. These are the officers. Remember the Lieutenant Franco I talked to you about. The Lieutenant Dietzel was Dad's pilot on the Boozer. Lieutenant Franco was on another airplane. Lieutenant Lewis was the co-pilot. Lieutenant I don't know where he comes in. And Lieutenant Dugan was the navigator. Dad said he could find his way anywhere on the earth if you blindfold him. Another one, Carl A. Borger was actually the bombardier. And again, there's Mr. Dugan again. I hope somebody sees this one day, and this might be their great-grandfather or their father. And this might be something that they see that they don't have. I hope. That's what we're trying to do here, guys. Okay, so here we go.
Nose arts.
Nose art. This would have been the nose art on the airplanes in Guam. I can't see what that one says.
I don't even think it says anything.
I don't think it says. This says upstairs maid. Evasive action. Devotion, I think. My devotion.
The sun setter. And a lady riding a bum.
Retriever. He's got her top in her hand. But those aren't really cool, guys.
Dreamboat.
Who knows? These might be the only remnants of a bunch of these.
Well, I have seen these pictures, and some of you can buy some books, and some of this nose art I have seen some of this nose art in those books. This is funny. This is Tropical Trollop, and it's the back of her, but here's the one in the front where she's got her dress
the
on,
other side.
but she's looking for the back end, and you can see her honey. That's really funny. These kind of go together, but it's not put in there, right? But strip for action. Kaylin. Dead Eye 2. Oh, baby.
Taurus.
Mm-hmm.
Tarfu.
Some of these will be related to Walt Disney characters. Some of them won't. Now, there was a very famous artist that most of these guys were copying was, and I forgot his name now, but there was a pinup artist at the time that was very famous, and that's how they got the idea for a lot of these nude women was from that artist. And I'm sorry, right at the present moment, it's not coming to me.
Cock of the Walk.
Yeah.
What in the heck? Interesting name. Rapid Robin.
Super Baby.
Miss
Lade.
Ooh. Yeah, the other neat thing to think about, guys, these weren't stickers. Somebody hand painted all this.
Yeah, this is. If you ever drink.
Yeah, have a drink.
Let me have a drink.
Oh no. Oh, we're back.
It's okay, keep drinking. Sorry, guys, we had a little technical snafu there. We saw it cut off for a second.
If you ever go to the Commemorative Air Force in Midland, Texas, you will see some of this real artwork that was saved on bombers. And they're very rare, and they're very collectible sought after today.
Oh, that was the naked lady.
So, anyway.
It's okay. Naked
It's okay.
ladies are okay. This is war.
Is war. War is hell.
Swing shift. Oops.
Salty Sal.
There she blows.
There she blows. Okay, so this brings us to a very sad part of my dad's. Remember, I told you that he didn't like to talk about the war, and there were certain things that really bothered him. Now, this is one that he never said it, but I know this is one that he never said it, but I know this bothered him. Here is, remember the Lieutenant Franco? He was actually on the Lieutenant McWhirter crew. Remember when Dad was sent back to Hawaii? Some of them weren't sent back. They actually went on to Okinawa, that kind of place, and they sent them on. These crew went on. Unfortunately, this whole crew, I understand, was killed on July 30th. I don't know where they were, but that it really hit Dad hard because of Lieutenant Franco being killed. Now, with that said, turn the light back on. We showed you one of the things I want to show you guys. If you ever remember, I don't know if you remember that wherever you were stationed at, 8th Air Force was within Europe, you would have a evasion map. So what I'm going to show you here is Dad's. This is actually his escape and evasion map. Now what this is a kind of, remember they're over water. So it's not going to help you a whole lot.
Is that better?
Can anybody see that? Now it shines through it. Give me the light.
Better or worse, Larry?
It's actually better.
Really?
The light was reflected.
Well, let's try this over here. How about that? How about this? Now you can see it. Okay, so each third of our operation, each crewman would get these are actually on silk. Silk does not deteriorate, okay? So what they did was give them this. If they got shot down, you got a little thing called one of these. One of these. And of course the airplane had ditching drills and they had survival stuff on the airplane. So everybody got one of these. Does that help?
I'm trying to make it to where you can read it.
Well, I don't know. I put that on there so, but anyway, if you noticed with this is actually the Guam, Tinian, the islands that are where he was at, and they actually was double-sided, okay? This was double-sided. I think this one shows Truk Island, okay? If you look in the middle of it, it says Truk. Everybody knows what happened on Truk Island. That's where they caught him in the Marianas Turkey shoot and sunk a lot of ships in Truk Island. But anyway, that's his escape and evasion map. Now, I had another friend that I befriended that was Dad's age. His name was Adrian Randall. And this is his escape and evasion map that he gave to me.
We'll get it up there.
Now this thing's too heavy. I can't move it. But he was actually with the 13th Air Force. 13th Air Force. And Mr. Randall he had 17 combat missions, 163 hours from May to July of 45. He was the nose gunner, and he was actually, it says it's the escape and evasion map for the 13th Air Force, 424th Bomb Squadron, 309th Bomb Group, and they were on Morotai, which is islands just pretty close to the Philippines, guys. But he was with the 13th Air Force, remember? Different Air Forces, different places. Now, we're going to go and show you this uniform here. Maybe you guys, this first time you've seen it, we showed it to you in the other video. Can everybody see it? Now, there are some medals on it. My dad did not care anything about those medals. I'm going to tell you right now, he didn't care. All those medals represented to my dad was that he did his job for his crew and got them back. He never said a thing about any medals. Got them, but they mean nothing. Meant nothing. He said, just like all these greatest generation guys, the heroes we left over there. I want you to remember that. The hero, I'm not a hero. Or he would have said that. He never did actually say that, but he would have said it. He said that the guys over here, the heroes, is the guys that died. And they sacrificed their lives for us to have the lives today. Now, greatest generation guys, and I'm gonna kind of end it at this one. Greatest generation. Why? You get to thinking about the time period they was born. Dad was born in 24, and what happened in 1929? The stock market crash. Thank you.
Great Depression.
Great Depression.
Well, stock market crashed. Didn't have no money. Dad said, we didn't have any money anyway, so it didn't really matter. We never did go hungry. I was raised on a farm. But just think, he was raised on a farm. 1929, my dad remembers my grandfather putting in the crops. They were cotton farmers. He would put in the crops, and then he would go to West Texas where Big Spring was, because that's where in 1929 they had a big discovery of oil, and they could go out there and work. I remember my grandfather said, I'd go out there. I worked from sun up to sun set for 50 cents a day. And another thing he said, I was damn glad to get it. Now, he did that. You've got to remember, then they were there at the Dust Bowl. Oklahoma, Dust Bowl. Third in the mid-30s. Okay, so Dad, the older he got, he didn't get to just sit on his fanny. You know, it's a long row to hoe. Well, Dad knew what that meant. He was left there, and he would be left with a hoe in his hand. He couldn't go to school unless he had all of his work done. And then he would be behind two mules in the drag all day long. Okay, so then all of a sudden they said, okay, boy, there's a war. Come on back and get your butt killed. So what kind of life did you have? So the last thing I want to tell you, after the best thing I knew about the greatest generation, because I worked around them all the time, was they had a hard work ethic, but they worked hard, they played hard. They didn't know how to enjoy themselves at all. I mean, my dad would go on a fishing trip. It wasn't a fishing trip, it was a house. They were still gathering food like they was in the Depression. So, you know, they wanted, when they come back, all they wanted was a good job and them to get on with life. But they wanted a good life. But you know something, guys? You know who had the good life? Their kids. We had the life they were looking for. Not to say they didn't enjoy themselves, but their kids actually finally reaped the rewards of all their sacrifices. And I hope that's where we leave it today. Did you know that they were all built from that same bolt of cloth that was just unbelievable? So I'm going to end it at that.
Show them the bus ticket.
Oh yeah. Dad was when the war ended.
We'll end it there.
They sent him back to the States, and the closest he was where they mustered out, what they called mustering out, to give you the DD-214 separation papers. He was in El Paso, Texas. Now, years later, my dad told me about riding from El Paso, Texas to Big Spring, Texas, which is about 345 miles, standing up all the way. And when I found that uniform, guess what I found in the pocket? His bus ticket. So there's his bus ticket. The last day he rode from El Paso to Big Spring, Texas. Standing up.
That's a long way.
That's a
standing
long
up.
way to stand
That's
up.
a good 4-hour drive in today's time. I don't think they had the interstate
So,
back then
no,
either.
no, they just had old Bankhead Highway. So, guys, we brought you a lot of stuff. I hope you've enjoyed all the stuff that we've showed you. Maybe you haven't seen the victory letter. You hadn't seen that kind of stuff.
I don't know if we showed them the victory.
Yeah, we showed them the victory letter. Action stamps. We showed you most everything in the book. I don't
If there's
think we
more
missed
stuff
anything.
you want close-up pictures of, I'll try and take pictures of a lot of this stuff and post them on our Facebook page, the Merry Boozers RC Facebook page. We'll try and get some of them on there so you can see them closer up, zoom in on them, look at them, kind of thing. So we'll get those on there.
Guys, we're enjoying what we're doing. I hope you enjoy watching what we're doing. Like and subscribe to the Merry Boozers.
Yep.
We're just trying to bring you stuff over and above your regular RC airplanes. If just tell us what you'd like to see. If there's any way we can bring it to you or show you some stuff. Papa Boozer has been working hard on patches.
Yep, he's got some more patches.
I got
done.
some more patches that I've been working on. Time period wise, we still haven't made a decision whether to sell them or not, but I know we keep tempting you, but Papa he's just kind of enjoying life too much. And anyway, just to give you an idea, but Wesley, what else do we need to show them?
That's it for now, guys. You know,
Don't forget to like
we-
this video.
we-
we're
You
about
know,
an hour and 10 minutes into
We
this video.
might
so.
do some history on these patches
Right.
to just give you an idea. Somewhere along the line, I've got something like, I don't know, 25 or 30 of them made to show you what different airplanes, different patches fit different squadrons, that kind of thing might be something interesting to see. So anyway, that's it for me.
Well, thanks, guys, for coming today. We're going to go on and cut this off. We're going to go eat us a big, delicious dinner, big family dinner tonight. Lori, come around here real quick and say hi to everybody. Just come on, poke your head in and say
come on
hi.
now.
Come on.
Yeah, this is our camera man.
our wonderful camera woman,
Yep.
Miss Lori.
Yeah, I'm
This
here.
is Mrs. Boozer.
I think Lori's enjoying. I hope Lori is enjoying what we're doing too. She's always there with us. Got to give her credit for that one.
Yep. Well, guys, we're gonna go on and end this. Thank y'all for coming today. It's been a real pleasure trying to make these videos for you. Like I said, just thanks for coming today.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go on and get out of here if there's no other questions. 2 hours is not mandatory. That's the pilot lounge.
No. My wife says I talk too much
So,
anyway, so we're gonna
We'll
cut it
bring
out
them more
there.
to you
Yeah, I was told
eventually.
in the beginning this was a 30-minute video. So.
Yeah. Well, it didn't end up being 30 minutes. I think
It's
whatever
hard-
you say it's gonna be, it's gonna
It's
be
hard
double.
to bring you all this stuff. We could have broke it down in a little bit more segments, but I think it'd be better if we just
do
two
it all at
and
once
do
and
it.
let you guys see it.
We have no more on the booster.
You know, eventually, like I said, we're going to probably do something where I scan these and make them real high definition for you guys. But we'll get there in time. So thanks, guys, for coming today. If you came in late, go on. The replay will be up really soon, and you can go back and see it from the beginning. So thank you.
Bye.